What would you tell your 18-year-old self? I said, don't take yourself so seriously. Don't sit there and beat yourself up. You don't know everything. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. You do not know everything. That's one thing I definitively can say is you don't know everything. If you make a mistake, after you take ownership, treat yourself with some compassion. Just understand you're not perfect because no one is. No one's perfect. And don't get into this cycle of beating yourself up because you couldn't figure it out. But it's not an unnatural thing. Who is the biggest obstacle in your life? You know the one I'm talking about, the one that is standing in your way. Who is that person? Who's that person that's holding you back? It's you. We're talking about the subconscious you, the self-sabotage you. The one that actually gets in your way of accomplishing your goals or doing the things that you need to do to get to where you want to be. We know what we're talking about. You know what I'm talking about. We're talking about why we do the things that we do and what stands in our way. It's you. When it comes to me, it's me. I'm the one standing in my mind. In my mind, there's something going on there that holds me back. And what I've found is that if you recognize this, if you take a minute to really understand what this means, and if you listen to what I'm telling you today, you are going to be successful at identifying these issues and working through them. So let's get into it. So self-sabotage, okay? A lot of people, you hear that term a lot. That means that, you blow stuff up in your life. You make it difficult for you to achieve the things that you want to achieve. Is that real? Or is that more your subconscious mind trying to keep you safe or comfortable or aligned, right, with your deeply ingrained beliefs that you've experienced since childhood? What are we really talking about here? If you really sit and think about what I'm saying, you'll start to understand as we go through this episode how many times you run into roadblocks and you can't even tell yourself why. You'll call a friend, you'll call a trusted advisor, you'll say, I don't know why I do these things. I don't know why I can get it done. But what I'm telling you is this is learned behavior. You have the skills and the ability to identify these issues, identify these roadblocks, pull them out of your brain, analyze them, and put them back in with a new set of programming. Think about this. Have you ever heard the term garbage in, garbage out? I say that in a lot, right? A lot of tech IT professionals say that. If you put a lot of clutter or garbage on your hard drive, it's not going to perform as well. Same thing. Think of your brain, right? Every single second of the day that you're aware and unaware, you're gathering information. Information is getting sucked in. It's getting programmed in. We can use that terminology today. And what happens is that over a period of time, things start to correlate into some kind of a result, right? So it goes in and it comes out. You may think it should only go in this way and it should come out that way, but sometimes it doesn't. What are we really talking about here, right? What do you mean that, Charles, if you're telling me that I don't even understand or identify the things that are going in my head? But it's true. They have studies to prove it. But think about this. Just bring it back down to your own situation. There's a lot of you, just like I have, that have reflected on, why do I do these things? Well, let's go to that first thing I said, keeping you safe. And then we go to the second, comfortable. So if your subconscious mind is constantly operating in the background and you're getting into a situation that requires it to intervene, and you may not even understand why it's doing it, and consciously you're wanting to do the things that you want to do, whatever it is. If you're making a pitch, maybe it's as simple as cold calling, right? Nobody really likes to cold call. That's what I hear. Some people say they love it, but everybody gets this like nervous feeling when they're calling somebody on the phone that they don't know out of the blue and trying to make them some kind of a pitch. Maybe they're going to get rejected. Maybe they're going to get hung up on. Maybe they're going to get told to go fly a kite. But you know what? Maybe somebody's going to be like, you know what? Thanks for calling me today. I really appreciate you taking the time to dial my number to give me this great information because this is something that I was looking for. Do you see what I just did there? There's two different outcomes, right? That my brain just spit out here in this episode. One was negative outcome, rejection. The other one was, wow, this person actually wanted me to call them. They put it out there and I dialed their number. And it's like, wow. So think about that. If you really break that down, you've got a negative outcome in your mind and you have a positive outcome. So if you just focused on the positive outcome and just believed that everybody that was going to pick up the phone was going to be nice to you or appreciative that you called, then you're probably more willing to do it. But the minute we get into that mode where somebody rejects us in some way, shape, or form, and our subconscious mind has some kind of programming of something that you picked up over the years that says, oh man, this is not good. This makes you feel bad. So therefore, I'm going to shut it all down because this doesn't feel right. I don't like that feeling in the pit of my stomach. I don't like the way that I'm feeling about this. I can't get it out of my head now. So therefore, let's go ahead and shut it down. Let's not go ahead and do this. Let's not continue. So all of these things just exist in your subconscious brain and are constantly moving around, and you're consciously trying to do something. Think about this. If you struggle with this, because everybody struggles with this, I don't care who they are. The difference is who figured out how to manage this better than others. The ones who figure out how to manage this problem because they understand it are going to be the ones that are going to win. They're going to be the ones that are going to move forward, and they're going to be the ones that are going to overcome obstacles, their own selves, in their whole entire journey of whatever they're trying to accomplish, right? It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's sales, whether it's building your business, whether it's, getting up the nerve, to ask somebody, to go out on a date with you, whatever it is that's standing in your way, right? It has to do with what your subconscious is doing. And I'm very fascinated with this subject matter because a lot of times people go, well, why is this such a big deal to you? Well, because I've struggled through it. And I've always wondered why one person who has all the talent in the world, all the knowledge, all the smarts, all the abilities, and believe me, guys, you do. You have some level of things that you are really good at. You just can't get there sometimes because there's some kind of a block. Maybe when you were a kid, somebody said you were never going to get it done. Maybe you actually saw somebody that said, you know what? This is impossible. You can't get ahead. You can't make it. It's just too hard. It's just too difficult. And maybe they didn't even say it to you, but they were just saying it out loud to themselves. And maybe that person was your parent, or maybe it was a really good friend, or maybe it was a family member, but it was somebody that was an influence in your life. And you took all of that somehow, right, as a kid. And over the years, it just kind of manifested. And when it came down to you, you decided that you weren't going to do it, or you weren't going to take the leap because all of this, whatever that was, you call it what you want to call it, but all of this data, this thoughts, this information penetrated your brain, right, in the subconscious, and ultimately made it so you didn't think that you could do it. So I've studied this for a long time. So think about this. If you think about what I just said, and you're going to consistently, not even knowingly, understand why that has such an impact on you. And we all have to go through it. I don't think anybody just comes out of the womb just ready to kick butt and take names. I mean, that would be awesome. But maybe as a child, because you haven't been exposed to these like learned behaviors and all of this information, maybe you're more willing to do that because you haven't learned yet that, this is supposedly unachievable, right? Because somebody couldn't get it done. Somebody didn't get it done. They didn't try hard enough, or they didn't find a way to get it done. So therefore, that has to be your outcome too. I say baloney. I don't believe that. I don't believe it. And the reason why I know that to be true is because I was that guy once. I thought that there was some level of limitation for whatever reason, because I heard somebody complain, or I heard that it's really difficult to open up a business, or it's really hard to do this, or it's really hard to do that. And somehow along the way, that just sunk in. But somehow along the journey, I started to break free of that. And how did I do that? Right? A lot of it is just, is it just as simple as making that decision? Well, you can make the decision, you could say it out loud, but if you don't understand, right, what is the very thing that's holding you back, then you're never really going to be able to push through it completely. But you can actually make some progress along the way. And the way that I did it is I just developed some level of discipline, right? And it was to the point where I think a lot of you who've heard my story was after I got laid off the third time and I was like, I'm just tired of this. I'm sick of depending on other people. I want a little more dependence on myself to be able to go out there and start a business because I'm a single dad now and I have to provide. So that was my moment where everything started to go, okay, well, this can't just be talk now. This has to happen. So it took me 5 years of going through that process because that was my goal of being able to learn these things and unlearn these behaviors, but they never really went away because I didn't really understand what was going on. I just did the discipline that I needed to do to get the job done. So think about this. That's a behavior, right? That is learned behavior. That was something that was behavioral. So I had to make a change, which required some discipline. So maybe I didn't take no for an answer, or maybe I set a set of rules up, for me to follow, as it went on to, my sales career or selling somebody our business. Maybe I made that extra call. Maybe when I told, maybe the deal was, hey, I'm going to leave this call. And if somebody acts interested or says they're interested, I'm going to set up a follow-up call in 2 days. And then I'm going to call them at the time that they gave me permission to call. You see what I'm talking about there? I'm actually just setting up a roadmap for me to follow. I didn't functionally know that this was some kind of a holdup in my brain. I didn't really start to really understand that except over these I would say over the last 5 years is when I started to really understand the power of the subconscious and the power of this learned behavior and this power of this like unsolicited belief that had been ingrained over the period of time. And when I finally came to that realization, I understood that I have to become more self-aware. So you can do this. You can become self-aware, but you're not going to do it all at once. So let me give you an example. So maybe you're a procrastinator. Maybe you just don't want to do that. So could that be that's just the way you like to roll? Or maybe it's something a little deeper. Maybe you don't like criticism. So if you procrastinate and just wait to actually get it done, then your brain is kind of protecting you. Your subconscious is protecting you, from that potential criticism that may or may not come. Or maybe you're in a bad relationship. And those relationships don't have to be romantic. They could also be business relationships, friendships. Maybe somebody just treats you like dirt. You can only answer that. Maybe you don't feel very good when you're hanging out with a specific set of people and they make you feel less than for whatever reason. But maybe you do that and put up with it and you'll complain about it because consciously you're like, man, this doesn't even make sense. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this today? Why am I sitting here putting up with so-and-so saying this and that about me? And I'm just sitting here taking it. And later on, I go back and I'm frustrated and I'm just upset. And I tell somebody that I know and they're like, why do you put up with that? And you go, I don't know. I'm not going to do this anymore. And then you do. Well, maybe it's a fact that you just don't feel like you deserve a good relationship. Where does that all come from? I'm not here to say toughen up or, this is from, some kind of psychological issue. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if we take the time to understand where all this comes from, and if you can find some practical ways, which I'm going to talk about as we go along, towards the end, I'm going to give you some tips to deal with this, to understand it. How do I become more self-aware? Why do I do the things that I do? In last week's episode, we did an overview of what this looked like. Why do we do the things? But if you can really understand it and accept and take ownership, okay? That's the key word, ownership. You got to own it. Don't blame everybody else. Don't blame anyone else. And the reason why is that not that they may not be guilty of something or they may not have, crossed you or offended you or whatever, but I'm just saying maybe they did get in your way and maybe they planted all this stuff in your head and you started believing it. Take ownership because that's the first step. If you can own it and understand that you're the reason why you can't get something done, then that's the first step that you have to take. Because once you own it, you're taking that power away of whatever that is, that roadblock. Because now you're saying, okay, you know what? Yes, you have the responsibility to understand that you have to own it. Because once you take that responsibility, then you can do something about it. But I'm not saying beat yourself up. Somebody asked me in an interview 2 episodes ago, you can go and listen back to it, just my story. What would you tell your 18-year-old self? I said, don't take yourself so seriously. So let's dive into that commentary. That comment means don't sit there and beat yourself up. You don't know everything. I'm sorry. I don't care who you are. You do not know everything. That's one thing I definitively can say is you don't know everything. If you make a mistake, after you take ownership, treat yourself with some compassion. Just understand you're not perfect because no one is. No one's perfect. And don't get into this cycle of beating yourself up because you couldn't figure it out. But it's not an unnatural thing. I see people get upset about, not making the play or not getting something done. So what is that really? Is that really just you getting back to what's familiar, feeling like crap? So you're going to kick yourself. You're going to kick yourself because you didn't get it done. Or you're going to kick yourself because for the last 12 or 15 years, you've been doing this same thing that's been holding you back. Well, I got news for you. Maybe you weren't supposed to figure it out until this very moment, and that's okay. So don't waste time once you figure it out going back and beating yourself up because it's pointless. It's a waste of time, I'm telling you. Because what good is it going to do for you other than waste time? Because all it's going to do, it's going to be another thing on some kind of belief to get in that way of you moving past this. So take your time. So I'll tell you a story. I mean, this is fascinating. I remember, I think it was probably the second time that I got laid off, maybe the third. And I remember that somebody had this opportunity. It was probably some multi-level marketing thing or, some opportunity that I was getting recruited for. And they had this big event in Las Vegas. And I remember flying and I asked my dad if he would come and come to the conference with me. And I was all fired up, right? We heard a lot of things, but in my mind, I was like, man, you know what? I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm getting laid off again. I just found out I already committed to this trip because somebody had approached me about this idea beforehand. And I was thinking, well, is this going to be the answer for me? Because I felt very vulnerable at that moment. So after the whole event, we went to the airport and I parted ways with my dad. He was flying back to Arizona. I was flying back to LA. And I got on the plane and they had overbooked it. And there was a lot of people and it was weird. It was, there was no air conditioning. It was dark. You know how it is when they sit on the tarmac and that plane was full. And I remember it was a 3 and 3, seating arrangement. And I was by the window because I used to love sitting by the window because it was always something that was one of my favorite things to do as a kid. And I remember the noise of them just slamming the overhead compartments and they couldn't get all the luggage in because they had oversold the flight. And there was people on board that they actually had to kick off the plane because they couldn't. And it was weird because they were like asking people or volunteers if they wanted to get off the plane, to give these people their seats, and they couldn't get all the luggage in. And I didn't know what was going on, and it was dark, and I felt very squished, right? I just felt out of control, and something just came over me. And I just had this overwhelming sense of anxiety, and it was crazy. And it was, and you know what it was? It really was, when I reflect back on it now, understanding it was this lack of control. I couldn't control what was going on in my life, in my job. I couldn't control, this plane, right? I couldn't control the fact that I was feeling, very stuffed and all of a sudden claustrophobic when that didn't happen before. And I used to love to fly. I mean, I still do now, but before I did. And what happened? So every single time I was just thinking in my mind, oh man, are we ever going to get off the ground? I just want to go home. And I remember that feeling at the pit of my stomach. And it was the most intense feeling that I've felt in a very long time. And I was super, super nervous, super anxiety filled. You know, the whole flight back, every little bump, every little jitter, every little thing was just like crazy. So guess what happened? So I wanted to describe that in detail for you. And I know it's a little bit long, but the reason is that none of that really had anything to do with the fact that the plane was oversold or they didn't have enough room for the luggage. It had to do with control. But the odd thing about it is, in my brain, every single time for years after that day that I get on a plane, I'd feel the exact same way. And that was just a reminder that I didn't have any control. And that bothered me. I didn't like the way that felt. So I would get anxiety filled when I'd have to go get on a plane. And I used to think, oh man, I just don't like to fly. But the crazy thing about it is I really did. I loved to fly. I flew a lot as a kid. So that had nothing to do with it. But my brain associated that with flying, but it really had to do with control. So over the years, I kind of went through this, crazy, just like routine of getting all worked up, before the flight. But one day, and I can't tell you what day it was, but I remember it was probably in the last 5 years, I realized what that was. And once I was able to take the direct correlation and take that out of my head, line it all out, and really dissect that, and it's not like it's any rocket science by any means. I just came out and go, man, that has to do with control. Then all of a sudden, I don't have that feeling anymore. So why did I go in such depth of that story? Is because I want you to understand that if you take the time to really just take that one component and just actually look at it, your brain will be able to unwind that. You can figure out the roadmap because ultimately it's you. You're the one who put it there. Your subconscious brain put it there. And it was just a reminder to me that I didn't have control. And the crazy thing about it is that after all that time, I never understood why I didn't like flying. I mean, I would tell people all day long, oh, it's because of this, it's because of that. But the reality is that I didn't like being out of control. And that kind of lines up with a lot of other issues. So that was a big one for me. And once I understood that no one can control everything, right? Some say that you can control anything. I mean, it really depends on where you stand on that. But this is what I'm talking about when you get back into your subconscious mind. And this is the approach that you need to take. You need to be curious about why these things happen. Don't just accept it. Okay, so here's another tip. Don't accept that it's just the way it is. I can never do it. I can't do this. I can't do that. Whatever that is that's in your way, why don't you pull it out and look at it and just try to understand where it's coming from? And then here's one. Let's go back to that comment. Don't take yourself so seriously. Don't be hard on yourself. Be compassionate. Be compassionate like you would to a friend, to yourself, to go, okay, well, you didn't have it all figured out. You didn't know what was going on. But what if you could pull these things systematically, evaluate them, understand it, and put it back in your brain? This is metaphorically. It's metaphorical, but this really is something that you can do. I've done it. It's weird. Now, me, the way I do it, some people like to write the stuff down. I do write things down on occasion, but I really am an auditorial learner. So I learn by listening and hearing. So I have to talk and speak it out loud so I can actually work it through. I mean, it was kind of funny, but I get a lot of, sometimes I get a little bit of grief from my wife because she's like, why are you going through this whole scenario again? Because sometimes I need to look at it a different way. But you can do that too. Some people like their visual, draw it out, draw out the things that happen, flow chart, whatever floats your boat, whatever makes it so you can identify the thing that you're having a hang up about and figure out how to work through it. Because if you don't, then it's just going to stay there. So it'll just continue to stay there. It doesn't mean you won't fix it later on. And by the way, you don't have to do, this is another tip. Don't do everything at once. Just pick one thing. Pick one thing. If you take anything away from this episode, anything, just pick one thing that's standing in your way, one thing that you haven't been able to do or figure out, and take that one thing and pull it out of your brain. Metaphorically, look at it, Evaluate it. That's part of this whole self-awareness, because the more and more you do it, here's the interesting thing that's going to happen over the years. You're going to get more experienced, and you're going to understand that you're going to get into a roadblock, and you're going to be able to do it like that, because you're going to figure out what's holding you back at that very moment. If you don't think that roadblocks still happen, then I got news for you. It's just, that's part of the journey. It's not a destination. It's not like once you fix it, it's fixed. No. What I'm talking about, here is a great saying that I love. Give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. So if you teach yourself how to identify, these little hangups or these little blocks, and you understand how to pull that out of your brain, analyze it, understand it, become aware of it, work through it, and put it back in, you're going to eat for a lifetime. You're going to know how to do this. And then it's going to become faster and faster. And guess what? As your subconscious learns what you're trying to achieve, or what, better yet, understands what you are going to achieve, then it's going to adapt. So you're going to be able to see these things coming. You might even be able to see these things coming in the future. You might be able to identify, a certain situation ahead of time, right? Better intuition, more experience. Maybe you're not going to step into it. Maybe you're not going to get yourself into a situation which you have to unwind. But again, that's not going to happen if you beat yourself up and if you're not compassionate with yourself. And I can speak from experience, because when I first started doing this, I'd get so frustrated at myself. Why couldn't you see this? If you would have just found out, if you would have saw this 7 years ago, imagine what you could have achieved. Well, here's the thing. That's 7 years ago. Can't go back in the past. And the reality is I didn't see it. I have to get over it. I have to get over the fact that if I would have identified it 7 years ago, something might have been different. But the reality is I just understand that I just wasn't supposed to see it. So, look, I've spent some time talking about this. And the reason why is because I think people need to understand that the subconscious mind is powerful. It has a purpose. It's ingrained. So think about it. What you're putting in is what's coming out. So if you spend a lot of time reading good material and good content and good books, guess what? You're going to get a lot of that. That's going to influence the way you think about things. If you're just scrolling every day and just listening to, some influencer talking about, why the sky is falling, then you're probably going to have a lot of that stuff in your brain too. So let me just issue this as some good advice. If you're going through this process, make sure that you're finding a space where you can actually see these things clearly, where you're not getting influenced. Get it? Influencers, influenced, right? Why do they use that term? Because you're actually doing something that they are recommending, right? They're projecting that. It's just like advertising. It's like marketing. It's like anything else. People might be trying to influence you without even knowing it, because they've got their own stuff that they're dealing with. So whatever crap they're dealing with, they're putting it on you. And you might be willingly taking it. Why? You might be like, oh yeah, you know what? I can do this. Why? Maybe you have a need to be needed. Maybe you have a need to fix somebody else's problem. And then you're sitting there going, well, why don't I fix my own? Well, maybe you should pull that out of your head and figure out why, and then put it back in. So on that note, if you know someone, who probably needs to hear this, share it with them. Look, I always encourage you to subscribe. I'm going to be talking about this the next few weeks. I don't know. I might be talking about it for the next 10 weeks. I don't know. We're going to see. But this is a really big subject that I think people need to really listen to. It can make a difference. I'd love to hear what you have to say on this matter. Leave a comment. Start a conversation. If you're feeling extra generous, rate the show. You can find us on YouTube at Hey Charles Biz, on Apple Podcast and Spotify at Hey Charles 77 on Instagram and TikTok, and Charles Ernst on LinkedIn. See you next time.